problem I have, this is where I have ground with both the far left but also the Tories, is that the EU does not have the institutional conditions to develop a very strong labour law. They haven't passed much labour legislation in the last few years. It's hard for them to get it through. Now, what happens as a consequence of that is, particularly in the UK, is we said, oh, well, our labour laws are dealt with by Europe, so we won't pass any labour legislation of our own. So we have this problem of zero-hour contracts, endless service agreements, people being paid ridiculously small amounts. And I kind of feel that if we didn't have that excuse of EU labour law, people might struggle a bit more and say this is an outrage. British politicians should take greater responsibility for these disgusting practices. So at the moment you get lots of people saying, oh, we want to get rid of this labour law right or that labour law. It's a regulatory burden. I want to see them telling their workers that if the UK left the EU. Now there are some exceptions for that, and the exceptions are very clear in my mind. They're those areas of labour law that have traditionally not been dealt with by organised labour. And I don't think anti-discrimination law has ever been dealt with well by organised labour, just from the point of view of that within trade unions, the groups that need to be protected are still a minority. They're only partially represented. I mean, women, they may be a majority, but I don't think historically trade unions have represented working women's rights as well as perhaps they could have. And having the Court of Justice passing legislation on equal treatment and equal pay in areas like disability rights, gender, sexual orientation, religion, race and ethnicity, I think has been really, really valuable. It's been one of the best things the EU has done. The problem is that without such a self-sufficiency test, there is the challenge of free riding, that you open the EU up to the accusation that people can just come to another member state to enjoy their benefits, and that's a problem. I'm not saying how big a problem is or whether the language is deployed is racist, but you do open your own citizenship up to something that is challenging. And so there has to be some threshold. What that threshold is, I'd have to think a little bit about it. I would say possibly yes. What I dislike about economic self-sufficiency is not that it stops people free riding. I think that's necessary. It gives a group of privileged people entitlements that others don't have. The idea that someone who's just swimming on a yacht off Monte Carlo can say, "Oh well, I want the same social benefits as someone who has worked their guts and given their all to a local community, through their children and the local school, local charities, the job they do." If we were talking about citizenship, I know which one I think has done more for the host society. This has always happened. It happened with Spain and Portugal. It obviously happened with 2004 entrants on Croatia, Romania and Bulgaria. So there will be them present. I personally don't think it's a good idea. The Conservative government wants to introduce new ones, which is until these societies become really very wealthy by their stage, as there will never be free movement. So the 75% threshold. This is would be a really tough one, which would mean that I doubt we would see free movement of Serbians, for example, in my lifetime. Now, I don't agree with it because I think it's one of the things that has actually generated huge benefits, social benefits in particular, for the EU. I think just looking how much better London is as a city since 2004, I have no doubts about it in my own mind. And now, the other reason why it's not a good thing, and this is what they discovered post-2004, is these people just come into the black economy. Depending what you look at, those 600,000 Poles who arrived in 2004, 2006, it's argued by some, by Polish associations, that up to 400,000 were already present before 2004. All that happened was they regularised yourself. And we're seeing now quite large numbers of Romanians, quote, coming to the UK. My own view is a lot of these people were probably already here, and it's much better for them and for the host society, both in terms of taxes, proper labour practices, proper housing, all the things that blight their lives and blight host society's lives. You don't have it. I also don't believe that every Serbian, Romanian and Bulgarian thinks, oh, Welwyn Garden City, I've been dreaming about living there all my life, and they rush off there. I think this is hugely overstated.